Good afternoon, everyone, and it's a pleasure to be here today. So firstly, I'd like to say that I'm coming to you from the traditional lands of the Mississaugas of the Créé, the Anishinaabe, the Anishinaabe, and the Confederacy of the Wendat. And I recognise the enduring presence of all the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples in the place where I live, work, and play. And I'm committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect for all. So today, I'd like to share with you a short presentation in relation to the federal government leading the way for Black employees in the public service in Canada. As the event showcased, I was the former Deputy Minister of Housing, Construction Standards, Multiculturalism and Antiracism in the province of British Columbia. Most recently, I have returned back to my home province to work in the public service here in Ontario. And so now I work in organisational transformation and accountability at the Toronto District School Board. Next slide, please. So it's my belief that in Canada, that the federal government needs to be setting the example for the whole of Canada. And why is that? It's because we know that the federal government were the first to put in place a call for action for federal employees at all levels. But I actually think that this extends to all public servants right across Canada. And I think the objective here is that we need to make sure that there is a process in place adopted by every public service organisation in the country that is transparent and is accountable, that all Black public services can hold their employers accountable for. And now I think that it is most important that we need to act to address the systemic issues that we're trying to solve and to deliver better outcomes for our Black employees. We know that the call to action took place in 2018. That's 4 years ago. And so I would like to see that by year 5, that there is a dedicated commitment from those individuals who have the ability to make sure that change can happen. Over to you, Liz.
Merci. Donc, je n'ai pas eu le temps, de présenter en fait l'ancien sous-ministre de la Colombie-Britannique, Angela Cook, qui a rejoint en fait en tant que directeur associé de la transformation organisationnelle et de la responsabilisation, le district en fait de Toronto. Elle a en fait été, comme je l'expliquais en fait, la sous-ministre en charge en fait de l'habitat, des standards de construction, multiculturalisme et de l'antiracisme pour la province de la Colombie-Britannique. Donc, ce qu'elle souhaiterait en fait, ce dont elle souhaiterait parler, c'est la façon dont nous pourrions en fait donner l'exemple pour tout le Canada, pour le gouvernement fédéral qui a en fait cette obligation d'agir pour les employés noirs à tous les niveaux, mais également notre objectif est d'avoir un système et un processus en place adapté pour tous les niveaux en fait de services publics à travers tout le pays et aussi d'agir maintenant afin d'adresser les issues, en fait, les problèmes systémiques et que nous devons en fait essayer de résoudre.
So it's my belief that right now what we need to do is push for the development of a call to action act for Black employees. As public servants, what do we know is that legislation that is linked to mandate letters is the vehicle by which we see advancement happening right across all of government here in Canada. And this is the only way that we're going to see that there is ultimate accountability to ensure that there is the progression and the equitable treatment of Black employees right across public services here in Canada. I know that from the work that I did in British Columbia in developing the Anti-Racism Data Act, that this has been a significant driver, not only for internal institutional change, but also within community. There is now an expectation and a level of accountability that government is going to deliver meaningful change and is going to be able to act upon the data that they have in front of them to ensure that we're designing out inequities and inequalities for people where there are disparities. So again, my plea and pledge is that we need to work together to develop a call to action act for Black employees. And I feel that it is now the way we need to benchmark as a level of accountability to ensure that the federal government can, on its statute books, have a mechanism to deliver transformational change that is consistent right across the board, and so that we are making all public entities in this country accountable for delivering the meaningful change that we all desperately want to see. Over to you, Liz.
Donc, nous savons que la législation liée à la lettre de mandat est le véhicule par lequel les progrès sont réalisés, car c'est le moyen ultime de mesurer la responsabilité. Le développement de la loi sur les données sur l'antiracisme 2022, Antiracism Data Act 2022, en Colombie-Britannique a été un moteur important pour le changement institutionnel et commentaire. Il s'agit maintenant d'un point de référence et d'un exemple dont le gouvernement fédéral peut s'inspirer pour inscrire dans la loi le changement transformationnel dont les fonctionnaires noirs ont tant besoin. Nous devrions tous collaborer ensemble.
So what's the solution? So I personally believe that right now that we need to ensure that there is a dedicated portfolio within the federal government that does have the full sole responsibility of advancing the progress for Black employees, not only at the federal level, but provincially and municipally as well, and holding all the crown corporations that government has a responsibility for to account. There should be a deputy minister who has the same right of audience and who is able to not only influence their deputy ministers at a federal level, but working cross-jurisdictionally to make sure that we are getting the outcomes that we are striving to see as part of the call to action. We need to see that those departments have reports and that the heads of the public service are making sure that through various mechanisms that there is a strategy in place to ensure that every government department, both nationally, provincially and locally, is delivering progress at the same speed with the same level of resources and also the same level of commitment and will to ensure that we are going to make this systemic change. And again, it needs to be in every entity, in every crown corporation. And there needs to be money that's dedicated to making sure that the federal government mandate that we hope that they will determine that they will take on has strategies and programs and initiatives in place that will ensure that when those entities are required to complete their reporting on progress measurement frameworks on an annual basis, that they are being held to account. And if there are discrepancies and disparities that we are identifying through the progress that we're wanting to see, that there is a mechanism in place to be able to address those organisations where additional help and assistance is needed to help them progress and push forward the careers and the work environments of Black employees in this country. Over to you, Liz.
Donc, quelle est la solution? Il devrait y avoir un portefeuille dédié avec la seule responsabilité de promouvoir les employés noirs dans les sociétés, les structures fédérales, provinciales, municipales, et également de la couronne, à tous les niveaux du gouvernement. Il doit être au niveau du sous-ministre avec le même droit d'audience et d'influence que tout autre sous-ministre faisant partie du conseil des sous-ministres. Le ministre soumet un rapport au chef de la fonction publique fédérale, qui est le greffier, et lui rend des comptes. Il devrait diriger la stratégie dans chaque ministère et également agence au niveau national, provincial, mais également local. Donc, toute entité gouvernementale, société d'État ou organisation qui reçoit des fonds publics est tenue de mettre en œuvre le mandat du gouvernement fédéral au moyen de stratégies, de programmes, d'initiatives et surtout en remplissant chaque année un cadre de mesure des rapports d'État. Mais ce que Angela Cook également expliquait est qu'il est crucial que cette personne ait le budget nécessaire, mais aussi les ressources nécessaires pour faire ce travail et pour avoir également les moyens d'adresser en fait les problèmes rencontrés.
So what is the federal government's pledge to Black public servants going to be? It is my view that we need to push forward with a deliberate anti-racism and equitable strategy for all employees. And it's not just the Black employees that are English speaking. We also know that there are significant challenges for those individuals who speak French at all levels as well, especially in those roles where there is a requirement to be bilingual. How are we not seeing the advancement of Black employees that can speak both of those languages move forward within the various levels of the public service? We also need to make sure that the federal government is clear in its commitment around the way in which action plans are designed and developed and implemented. So as I've said, there is a standard practice nationally across the board that everybody is working to. And there also needs to be an element of continuous improvement components built into the framework to ensure that everything that is put within the Call to Action Act, within the action plans and within the frameworks ensure that there is continuous improvement, it's linked to performance outcomes, and most importantly, cultural conditions in which employees conduct their work. We know that very often, and we hear it anecdotally on a regular basis, that some of the environments are very challenging for our Black employees. And what is being done to ensure that those workspaces are as productive and as healthy as possible. And again, we know that mandate letters are the key driver that link to the strategic plans and the work plans and performance evaluations. And it's not just enough to hold the senior executives accountable, but it should be all of those individuals within public service who have a managerial responsibility, who are required to act and to ensure that we're progressing the environment and the careers of Black public servants. Over to you, Liz.
Alors, l'engagement envers les fonctionnaires noirs. Angela Cook pense en fait qu'une stratégie délibérément antiraciste et équitable pour les employés noirs, pour les personnes parlant anglais et français à tous les niveaux. Une formulation claire de l'engagement du gouvernement fédéral avec des directives claires et des plans d'action conçus, élaborés et mis en œuvre comme pratique courante, mais également contrôlés avec des composants d'amélioration continue pour mettre et pour défier en fait les entités concernant les résultats de performance, des conditions culturelles dans lesquelles ces employés travaillent quotidiennement. Les plans stratégiques, les plans de travail, les évaluations de performance de tous les cadres supérieurs et de ceux qui ont des responsabilités de gestion devraient être liés à des obligations obligatoires par toutes ces lettres de mandat. Et nous savons en fait que ce n'est pas tout, mais ce serait un début.
So the story so far, as we can see, we are seeing some examples of Black employees being elevated into senior positions. And, that is piecemeal across the country. And I would say that that is reflective of the demographics where our Black communities live. We know, for example, in Nova Scotia and also in Ontario, we are seeing significant waves of Black employees being elevated. But in those other provinces where the demographics aren't so large, we're not seeing that progress, and often it can be challenging for those individuals to be able to enter into senior levels of government. We also see as well that there are a significant number of women progressing, and I know somebody's going to ask me for the data, and there isn't actually any stats available, but just by doing a visual audit, we can see that there is a significantly higher number of women progressing versus Black males who we are seeing are trying to get into those senior levels and often not securing those positions. And again, we know that the bilingual French-speaking people don't progress at the same pace as others who are non-Black, who can speak more than one language. And for me, it's about making sure that we are setting the standard and the benchmark right across the country. And as I said, the Ontario Public Service and their approach in terms of being progressive in actioning the feedback and the data that they've received in highlighting that there were challenges, we are now starting to see that they have a dedicated action plan and strategy in place to support Black professionals who work in government. Even more recently, even hiring a Black Chief Talent Officer, which visually sends the message that as a government that they are serious about advancing the careers and the progressions of Black employees. And whilst we know that British Columbia and Nova Scotia have commenced their journey too, we're also wanting to see moving forward how they're looking to improve their Black employee experience at the same rate and pace that we're seeing here in Ontario. And you'll notice that there are other provinces and territories that aren't reflected here. And primarily that's because we weren't able to identify and clearly what their strategies are around the Black employees that they have within their public services. Over to you, Liz.
Alors, l'histoire jusqu'à présent. Donc, dans tout le Canada, nous voyons des exemples d'employés noirs qui accèdent à des postes de direction. Il y a un nombre important de femmes qui progressent. Et Angela Cook disait qu'elle s'attend à ce que quelqu'un lui demande de montrer les données. Et elle ne les a pas exactement, mais elle nous encourage en fait à regarder autour de nous et à observer qu'il y a une progression de carrière des femmes. Cependant, les hommes noirs sont autant désavantagés. Nous savons que les Noirs francophones bilingues ne progressent pas dans le secteur public au même rythme que ceux qui parlent plus d'une langue et qui ne sont pas noirs. L'approche pour aborder cette question est fragmentaire à travers le Canada. Et le meilleur exemple jusqu'à présent est celui de la fonction publique de l'Ontario, qui a une approche pour donner suite, en fait, pour faire un suivi des commentaires et des données récoltées et qui ont pu mettre en évidence, en fait, des stratégies et des défis concernant les professionnels noirs qui travaillent dans le gouvernement. La Colombie-Britannique et la Nouvelle-Écosse ont également entamé leur parcours et cherchent des moyens afin d'améliorer l'expérience des employés noirs. Et Angela Cook reconnaît qu'il y a également des gouvernements provinciaux auxquels elle ne peut pas faire allusion parce que nous n'avons pas en fait leur stratégie développée.
Thank you, Liz. So in terms of the status quo for Black employees, we know that the current inequities and inequalities not only play out in the workplaces, but they also play out in community and at home. Why do I say that? Because when we go to work every single day, not only are we representing the Black employee sector, we're also representing our communities. And there is a high expectation for us to deliver for them. And obviously, when we're in our home environments, when we, are dealing with, really difficult work environments or things aren't going so well, we know that that impacts our loved ones and our families. And often they are the ones that see the struggles and the challenges that we're going through each and every day. And so what happens in these instances when, as Black employees, that you do try and highlight the environments in which you work every day? We know that there are instances of individuals who often face consequences. The work that they are doing no longer is valid or relevant, or, they are made to feel like they no longer add value to the teams. We know that it's having a significant impact on mental health, and the fact that there is support out there through EAP. There's nothing in place to address the ongoing trauma that we deal with on a daily basis. It's more focused on post-traumatic trauma. So we need to really start to think about how we can get those supports in place. And also nationally across the board, in all levels of government and public service, there are varying degrees of support groups that are available. And it would be my ideal aspiration to see that there is support in every province and territories and at all levels of government. Because what support works, for example, in Ontario or in Nova Scotia, may not necessarily work in BC or in Alberta or other Western territories, because the work environments and the lifestyle in all of the provinces and territories are very different. And we also need to remember, as Dr. Nicholas mentioned, that there is a pervasive impact on mental health, and we need to be able to gain access to local Black specific services. And that's not to say that there aren't great services right across the country, but we need individuals, for example, who live in Alberta or BC to be able to support Black employees in those areas, because their lived experience, their work experience is very different to those that live in the Eastern Territories. And then the other thing that I want to mention is that, there is this perception that, Black women do cry in all areas of public service. And this is very true. And this is because of the level of harm and trauma that they face on a regular basis. And I would like to see that there is some recognition that, this harm that's being caused needs to have strategies in place to be addressed. And also, we've mentioned that there does need to be intentional measures to be able to, measure the level of progress in relation to not only how we hire, support, and retain Black employees, but making sure we are holding those accountable to those strategies or those missions or values that have that distinct statement, is that they're actually doing what they say they set out to do. Over to you, Liz.
Merci. En raison du temps, et je vais en fait résumer ce que Angela Cook a expliqué. Lorsque nous nous présentons en fait sur nos lieux de travail, nous nous présentons pas tout seuls. Nous nous présentons sur les lieux de travail avec notre communauté noire avec nous. Et cela, en fait, les inégalités, les injustices actuelles qui se manifestent sur le lieu de travail, aussi dans la communauté, ont des répercussions et viennent entrer dans notre cocon familial. Il y a en fait, on parle souvent en fait de l'impact du racisme sur la santé mentale, mais l'emphase jusqu'à présent est que le traumatisme est n'est pas post-traumatique malheureusement, en raison de la toxicité des lieux de travail. Le traumatisme est récurrent. Il est important également d'avoir les ressources, par exemple les thérapeutes noirs, mais aussi locaux, qui comprennent nos réalités locales. Car ce qui fonctionne en Ontario ou ailleurs ne fonctionnera pas forcément en Colombie-Britannique ou en Alberta parce que nos réalités sont différentes. Il y a effectivement cette tendance où l'on voit en fait des femmes noires qui travaillent dans la fonction publique et qui pleurent. Et malheureusement, c'est une réalité. Up to you.
Thank you. So what must happen now? I do feel that there should be a coordinated approach at the federal level so that all governance structures within government are consistent and the same, and that we have a plan in place to systemically address anti-Black racism, both structurally and institutionally. And there needs to be dedicated budget dollars, and I'm not talking small amounts of money, significant amounts of funding to be able to address the advancement and the needs of Black employees. And we already know that there is work ongoing right now nationally around disaggregated data that has an intersectional analysis. And there's lots of work being done right now by, Dr. June Francis and Christina Hendrickson from Laboratorio at Simon Fraser University that have evidence that this information is going to be key to helping us to solve the issue of supporting Black employees within public service. And there needs to be a commitment to deliver on the obligation of Section 15 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms 1982. Over to you.
Donc, il faut une approche coordonnée entre tous les ministères à tous les niveaux de gouvernance de ce pays. Et pour lutter contre le racisme anti-noir de manière systémique, structurelle et institutionnelle, nous devons intégrer dans chaque politique, programme et service l'obligation de répondre aux besoins des employés noirs. Et il faut également un budget conséquent pour pouvoir lutter contre ce racisme anti-noir. Il y a déjà du travail qui est en place, entre autres par le Dr. June Francis. Il est important d'exploiter les données désagrégées avec une analyse intersectionnelle et il faut s'engager à respecter l'obligation de l'article 15 de la Charte canadienne des droits et libertés de 1982.
And so finally, I just want to leave you with this last thought, and it goes back to the start of the presentation. We want to see a call to action act for Black employees. And we've established through the presentation with Dr. Nicholas that there is an obligation to act. And so it is my view that it's time to commit to Black public servants and that there will be enactment of laws that will put in place rights, protections, and mechanisms to support the call to action for Black employees. What we're asking for is to deliver meaningful and lasting change. And our federal government needs to set the example for the rest of the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Ce que nous avons en fait établi, c'est l'obligation d'agir. Il est maintenant temps de s'engager pour les fonctionnaires noirs. Il y aura une promulgation de lois qui mettront en place des droits, des protections et des mécanismes pour soutenir l'appel à l'action pour les employés noirs. Il est temps d'apporter des changements significatifs et durables et le gouvernement fédéral doit donner l'exemple à l'ensemble du pays. So, thank you for your patience. Now, last but not least, it is our pleasure to welcome Dr. Rejoignez le RJFF.